Hello guys, welcome again to this new video, and it is also about setups. I thought that last videos were not so clear, and I had a question from you guys, and for me it's a good idea to share with you my methodology or the steps I follow when I set up a GT car. It also applies to any other sim and any other car. So I will try to show you what's my way to quickly and effectively set up the car and my steps. So here you go, some guidelines. Important to use last stable or good setup as starting point. Learn the track. Wow, it's very big. One change at a time. One change at a time. I cannot emphasize this more. Um, you you see this angry teacher. Is trying to emphasize it also. One change at the time. So setup work is about patience. If you're not patient with the setup work, you cannot set up the car. And when you try to go quicker on setting up the car, you go the wrong way, because when you are patient, actually you will gain massive time on the setup work. So please be patient, one click at a time. Focus is patient also. Focus on one issue at the time. If you have an understanding issue, focus on resolving this issue. Don't focus on top speed, braking performance, the understeering on one corner, oversteering on another corner, and you try to solve them at one time. No, it's not possible. Focus on one issue at a time. You will gain too much time. And before you start your setup work, analyze the track. What are the most important turns? On every track, you have at least 10 or 12 corners or turns. You cannot work on the 10 turns. You cannot have a perfect car for every corner on the track. There are some important corners, there are less important corners that you may sacrifice in order to go quicker for the on the sector 2 or sector 3, depends. So it's important to have this information. And at the beginning, check, and you need to know, is it a fast track, slow, bumpy? Are there any elevation changes? Is it a narrow track, wide? The condition, dry or wet? For every track type or every situation, you have to set up the car differently. So it's important to know it at the beginning. And of course, focus on your driving line. If you have a wrong driving line, setup doesn't matter. Then you need to develop a feeling of the car's balance or the car's behavior. How does the car behave? In general, no. Um, it's you cannot have clear idea when you think Generally speaking, the car feels understeering. It doesn't mean anything. You have to be able to tell the difference between understeering in the corner entry from the understeering at mid corner and understeering on the corner exit. Three different paths and three different situations, three different solutions. You have to be able to tell the difference where the car understeers or oversteers, etc. The same thing to the speed. High speed corner is different from low speed corner, completely different. So you have to tell the difference of the car's behavior at high speed corner and at low speed corner. How does the car feel or behave on braking and acceleration? You have first be able to tell the difference. Is it your braking style that causes the issue, or the brake bias, or the pedal force, or the suspension? You have to develop this sensitivity to the car's behavior and balance. The only way to develop this sensitivity is to focus on one issue at a time. When you focus on one issue at a time, and you try to solve it with one click at a time, one change at a time, you will develop this sensitivity, and you will be surprised after maybe few setups, few hours, how your feeling has changed. It's not it the feeling um doesn't depend on the wheel you have, direct drive or G27 or G25, Fanatec, Thrustmaster. It doesn't really matter. What is matter is when you focus and be patient, you develop this sense of the car's behavior within the simulator. It will tell you the difference between the braking style issue or the suspension issue. To help you focus, take notes. You may have so many issues with the car's balance, and you lose, you get lost because you have so many things. Take notes and solve one issue at a time. And I repeat it, you cannot have a car that is perfect for every corner or every situation. So you cannot have a fast setup or a good setup for wet track that works also for dry track. You have to find the balance between both of them. Okay, you cannot also have a fast car that has very good top speed, and a car that turns very quickly on bumpy track, because top speed needs low rear wing and bumpy fast corners need high rear wing. You have to choose between top speed and downforce. Okay, so first thing I do, and this one applies to R factor 2, first thing I touch is I reduce the camber to its minimum values. So minimum values means close to 0. I do it because I'd like to isolate the suspension work from the tire grip, the suspension grip and the tire grip. Okay, I reduce the camber to its minimum. And I also reduce the traction control to its minimum. Traction control may hide snap oversteering, may hide lower rear end grip on out of the corner, so I remove it. Usually I go with 0 and maximum 2. Then you adjust the brake force to your liking, so it depends on your strength, and all these parameters will go to them after the suspension, so this is not the final adjustments. Here we can give you a tip about the camber. This is personal. What I found is that a good starting point and a good balance regarding the camber is to use the front camber is twice the rear camber. And you have this example. If you go with rear camber 1.2, I put the front twice as 0.2, so it is 2.4. It is a good starting point. Most important parts: springs and anti-roll bars. First tip: springs and anti-roll bars work together. So for me, this is personal. Soft springs works better with soft anti-roll bars. Stiff springs works better with stiffer anti-roll bars. For me, I found that it is a good balance on R Factor 2. And if I don't have any base line set up and I need to start from scratch, as a starting point, I go with 1 or 2 clicks stiffer front springs than rear springs with detached rear anti-roll bar. This is a safe starting point when I don't have any baseline setup. A third tip: I focus. Fast tracks need stiffer suspension. When I mean suspension, springs and anti-roll bars, because high-speed corners will kill the tires very quickly if you have soft suspension. So you need to have consistent aerodynamics when turning at high speed. Otherwise, you will understeer or oversteer. So stiffer suspension will have a better aerodynamic at high speed. After I have set the springs and anti-roll bars, and we will have a complete summary on how to set up springs and anti-roll bars on the by the end of the video. So the step number 3 is the differential, the power, coast, and preload. It's important to set them correctly at the beginning and forget about them. Okay, you set up your suspension, you have a good balance, you try to go quicker in the corners. For example, if you need more speed on corner entry, use lower coast. If you need more speed out of the corner, use lower power. If you need more speed off throttle, use lower preload. Okay, otherwise don't change the values. And these changes cannot be effective if you are not consistent with your driving style. Coast is about the when you start braking and you go off brakes, the coast takes effect. So if your trail braking is not good enough, you will have oversteering or understeering. So changing the coast will not help you. So cure your driving style before changing these values. Step number 4. So we have set up the suspension, springs and anterior bars. The differential will not go back to it, it's fixed now. After that, I go to the rear wing. What I do is I go with the lowest rear wing possible for high-speed tracks like Monza, like Spa, and Barcelona. I try the lowest ring possible, but if the track is bumpy and there are elevation changes, I will add more rear wing. Okay, the cars on R-Factor 2, when there is bumps, you need downforce to keep them on track. Okay, and if the lowest doesn't work, I will add one click and I check if the car's balance is good, and I will stop before introducing any understeering. I don't need any understeering, because if you add too much rear wing, you will have understeering on high speed corners. And if it is necessary to have high rear wing and you have understeering, you have to go back to the suspension and do rework again on the suspension. Okay, so these steps, you may go up and down, and you have to check, find out the good balance for you. The values, of course, it depends a lot on the car and track combo. Okay, some cars work better with high rear wing, some cars work fine with the lowest rear wing. So I have set up my rear wing, I'm happy with it. Now I will check the ride height. So as a rule, use the minimum ride height possible, and you stop when you start bottoming out, especially on high speed corners, because at high speed corners the downforce will compress the suspension. When the suspension is compressed, the chassis may bottom out, may hit the ground. When the chassis hits the ground with a totally compressed suspension, you lose the grip. When you lose the grip, you lose the car. So bottoming out on the high speed corners and bumpy tracks are very dangerous. So ride height at this point is critical to set up. For example, I use higher ride height for Eau Rouge and the Radion at Spa for the same reason. On these corners there are some bumps and elevation changes and very high speed. So the rear and the front of the car are compressed, and the chassis hits the ground, you instantly lose the rear of the car. If it is an MP2, if it is a GT car, it's the same issue on this part of the Spa. So the only way to solve it is to use higher ride height. For bumpy tracks also like Sebring, you need higher ride height, especially on the first corner and on sunset. And on the hairpin, the so the last corner of the first sector, it's a very high braking section. On the bumps, the front suspension get compressed to its maximum, and when the front of the chassis bottoms out, you look up the front right tire and you lose grip, so you will not make it to the turn. So pay attention to ride height on Sebring, it's very bumpy there. And Portimao is very good also example of elevation changes that needs higher ride height. And this third rule is don't go very high with the ride height. You may need stiffer springs and breakers in order to cure any bottoming out. Okay, very high ride height, you will lose downforce. And the car will feel very sluggish and steery and will not feel right. You have to work simultaneously and in harmony. You have to find the balance between a good ride height and a good stiff springs. Stiff springs will resist the compression at high speed and on the bumps. Okay, it will compress much less, so the ride height still good. You have a better control on the ride height with stiff springs. Okay, so you have to find the balance. So what I do, I use the minimum ride height. If I bottom out, I will add a little bit of the ride height, maximum 1 centimeter. So if the lowest possible is 5 centimeters, I will go till 6 or 6.5 centimeters maximum. So if at 6.5 or 6 centimeters I still bottom out, I will say, okay, so at this point I will stop and I will go with 1 click stiffer springs. Okay, if stiffer springs doesn't change anything, I will add breakers, or maybe I will add breakers and stiffer springs. I hope you see the point, and I hope it's clear. This work here, you need to be very patient. It's not easy. So now we come back to the camber. So we have a good balance on the suspension. We have a good downforce. We have the good ride height. We check the camber. So we started with the lowest camber possible, and now we have a good balance. What we can do, we can add more negative values to the camber. So we add 1 click or 2 clicks. I usually go with 2 clicks, but the rule is 1 click. But sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between 1 click and 2 clicks on the camber, so I usually go with 2 clicks on the front camber, and I go out and check, did the more negative camber gave me time? So did I gain time on the lap times or not? If not, I roll back. So I roll back to the original values. And for the rear, I do the same thing. I add 2 clicks and I check the turning, the behavior of the car when I accelerate out of the corner. The rear camber will give me more grip, more traction out of the corner or acceleration. You will have more turning, but at some point you start sliding, so you have to stop before starting sliding. You have to feel the car is turning out of the corner with full throttle without spinning. Okay, if the car starts spinning or sliding, you roll back. And don't introduce more camber if it's not absolutely necessary. Okay, uh, and don't get fooled by the first 2 laps. You have fresh tires. You may feel that you are quicker with more negative camber. The car turns a little bit better, but when your tires get hot, you will lose grip and you will lose too much time. So don't go crazy with the camber on R Factor 2. On R Factor 2 doesn't like too much negative camber. 2. So 2, I proceed with the same thing as the camber. I use the lowest possible, so I have the max. With the lowest 2, I will have less tire wear and higher top speed. So I start with 0 as 2, and if I feel that the car needs more initial turning into the corner, I will add 1 or more or 2 clicks as a 2 in. 2 in at the front means negative values. And if I need more stability on the acceleration and high speed corners at the rear, I will add more 2 out, so more positive values to the rear. So you have to pay attention that 2 affects top speed and really affects top speed. So this is a summary. I will not go on the details of how to cure oversteering. You see, this is a sheet, table sheet, where I have a good summary. I check the corner speed. If it is slow and if I have oversteering on turn entry, this is the actions you can make, and I put them by order of priority. For example, if on slow corner at the entry I have oversteering, I will first go with 1 click stiffer front springs or 1 click stiffer front anti-roll bar. Okay, if this change doesn't cure oversteering, I will roll back and then I will try 1 click softer rear spring or 1 click softer rear anti-roll bar. 1 click at a time, and I go out and check, does the oversteering is gone or I still have oversteering. If I still have a little bit of oversteering, I will say, okay, I may get used to it. It's not too dangerous. But if it is very dangerous, then I will add 1 click stiffer front spring and I will have 1 click software spring. So 2 actions on the same time. This is if I have really a dangerous oversteering. But the rule is one click and one change at a time. Okay, and you have for every situation and every at the mid-turn, turn exit, etc. You have some idea on how to cure the issue. You can take a screenshot. It will be very helpful for you. So thank you very much for watching. This has been a very long video, but I felt that it is necessary to do things correctly and provide you with a complete setup methodology and setup steps. If you can join our Discord community, this one I have created recently. We can discuss their setup work. You can have access to all the setups I have built so far. So thank you very much and see you next time. Bye.